Welcome to Cool, 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 a podcast about queer stuff, not queer stuff, pop culture, anti-pop culture, and a bunch of other cool stuff. I'm Liz Cully, a longtime entertainment executive, host, friend, dog mom, and I always happen to have a story for everything. Whether it's a 6 degrees of separation or a crazy night out where I almost died, I've been telling stories my entire life that seem too wild to be true, but trust me, they are. And even if they weren't, who cares, because they're entertaining. Join me each week as I explore topics ranging from crypto to cooking to even queer family planning, joined by some of my nearest and dearest, and even a couple of celeb strangers. I'll share stories from the past and present, giving you an inside look into what it's like to be Hollywood adjacent and always living on the edge. Welcome to Cool, Cool, Cool. Okay. It's very nice to see you again.
Great to see you.
I have to tell you, I was so nervous the first time we spoke. I was like, am I going to say the wrong thing? What am I going to do? So I feel good that I have that under my belt already.
Never any reason to be nervous, but
Well, I mean, it's not every day that you get to talk to a congresswoman, so yes, a little nervous. Talk to me about your last 100 days.
well, the last 100 days have been a hell of a decade. When I when I ran for Congress, I said that I would work with anyone who was willing to work with me to deliver for Delaware, but that I would stand up to anyone who I believed was hurting Delaware. And obviously, the last 100 days, we've seen from the Trump administration an all-out assault on our progress as a country and an effort to dismantle and destroy life-saving programs across this country that my constituents and Americans rely on. We are seeing this administration try to prove that government can't work by making it not work, by choking off funding for programs, by summarily firing thousands of qualified federal workers in departments ranging from the Department of Agriculture to Veterans Affairs. And of course, right now through Congress, we're seeing Republicans trying to ram through a budget that would result in the largest cut in Medicaid in American history, all to just partially pay for tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans. And so I've been doing a lot of defending right now, joining with my colleagues to sound the alarm on this administration's cruel and chaotic policies that are destroying our economy, trying to support efforts and introduce legislation that staves off the worst excesses of this administration. I actually led my colleagues when this administration announced that they would be stopping funding for manufacturing jobs in my state. I led my colleagues, more than 80 of my colleagues, demanding that they reverse course, which they did. So there's been a lot of pushback on this administration, but there's also been a lot of opportunity for progress. I was the first freshman Democrat to introduce legislation in this Congress, bipartisan legislation. I've introduced multiple bills since then, all so far bipartisan, ranging from consumer protections to bringing down the cost of eggs and chickens at the grocery store by protecting farmers. So we're getting a lot of momentum on really important quality of life issues for my constituents. But it's obviously a really distressing time for all of us, given what's top of mind and given who's in the White House.
Could you have expected it to go this intense on the budget cuts? I mean, we spoke, I don't know, I guess maybe 2 months ago, and obviously things were happening because, the elected president and his regime, if you will, went, pretty hardcore from the beginning. But could you have, it feels like as a regular American, every day when I listen to NPR, which anybody who's listening, please donate to NPR, since they are up against losing their federal funding. Every day it's a new cut to really important programs, whether it's education, you mentioned agriculture. I think, national parks made its way to a lot of people because that's such a huge, that's not only just a memory base, but a huge part of people's lives. Could you have expected this? Or did you expect this?
I expected it to be bad.
Yeah.
I expected them to try to follow the Project 2025 playbook, despite the fact that sorry for the bells, it's a hazard, occupational hazard here in
That's okay.
Congress.
Zoom is really fancy now and I can't hear it,
Oh, very cool.
but I like to know
Um,
about what happens over there.
yeah, it's like high school. There's just a bunch of random bells that constantly
That
ding.
would be incredibly triggering for me, Congresswoman, because high school was not a happy place for me. So if I heard high school bells, I would be under the desk crying.
Under the table, well, I hate to break it to you, but Congress is a lot like high school.
Girl, better you than me.
It's particularly on the other side of the aisle, I will
I bet.
say.
I bet. I bet.
But you know, I expected them to try to implement their Project 2025 agenda despite pretending like they had never heard of it or read it. I think you know the scale and the speed and the just complete willingness to take a chainsaw to every part of our government, including the parts that people who voted for this president disproportionately utilize and rely on. I think it's you'd be hard pressed to find someone who isn't surprised just how much they don't even care about their own voters. But as sort of politically surprising as that is, it's not surprising from a human standpoint because what is clear is that Donald Trump has never cared about anyone but himself.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you're right. The last time we spoke, you really impacted me a lot and made me think a lot about a lot of things, but in particular, allyship and a lot of the hard conversations that particularly LGBTQ folks have had to face, not only during the campaign of the election, but then after the election. And we talked about imperfect allyship. And I was like, I want to cut off family and friends that, I just feel like I have to protect myself emotionally and I can't do it. And you really opened my eyes to the fact that we do need to continue to have conversations. How do you think that's going? Like, do you think people are now having more conversations at all?
Yeah, and I will say, you know, I think if let's say you're an LGBTQ person, you're a trans person, and you've got a family that is deeply, deeply unaccepting, or you're a gay person and your family is rejecting you. I'm not saying that you know people who are closest to the pain have to self-sacrifice themselves.
Right.
I think
No,
that's an
no, yeah.
unfair burden. But I want my allies, I want my friends to maintain proximity and relationships with people who span the gamut.
Yeah.
You know, I think to your question, to your point, a lot of times our perception of allyship in this moment is when we see someone who's saying something wrong, we shame them, we yell at them, and most dangerously, we defriend them, we cut them out of our lives, and that is fundamentally unsustainable for a democracy, but it's also fundamentally unsustainable for social progress. The only way we are going to open hearts and change minds is to be in conversation with people who are not yet part of our choir. And I recognize that that's challenging. And I recognize that change making is not easy and it's not even fair.
Yeah.
But we shouldn't be surprised that overcoming marginalization is an unfair process. And while I'm not saying that every single person needs to be, you know, going on to the Manosphere podcasts and having interviews. I'm not saying that, you know, every single person has to, you know, keep toxic people in their lives or people who are hurting them in their lives. What I'm saying is, for those of us who are willing to have those conversations, for those of us who are willing to engage with people and be in conversation with people who are everything from imperfect allies or frankly even worse than that, let us do that work because
Right.
someone has to.
Yeah.
And we can't we can't create a one size fits all approach. We cannot have a single strategy to effectuate change. Yes, we need people who are in the streets yelling, but we also need people who are in those quiet moments having those difficult conversations. And, our grace has been abused, but the answer to that, the course correction for that, cannot be eliminating all grace from our politics and our dialogue. We have to find a middle ground where we have grace so long as people demonstrate growth. But to have that growth, you ultimately need the foundation of grace for people to change.
I'm really hoping, I mean, I hate that it's come to this, but I'm hoping even in my own personal life, especially with my parents, the fact that Medicaid, which they definitely rely on, Social
Yeah.
Security, those being attacked, unfortunately, sometimes they can only, respond to things that happen to themselves. Some people lack the ability to feel empathy for other people and put themselves in other people's shoes. But I'm hoping that those are the inroads to the conversations that you're talking about, the steps of being, of being able to talk about how this current administration is failing everyone, in particular the people that decided to vote for him.
Y- y-
Um, but, you
Can I,
know,
yeah, and I think that's such a good point about the need for us to be in conversation with people who voted for this president, because I think for us to defeat not only Donald Trump, but Trumpism,
yeah,
we have to inoculate this country to it. And the only way to do that is to turn a supermajority of this country against this president, for people to rightfully see that Trumpism is what it is, which is a failed experiment that is corrosive to our economy, corrosive to our individual souls, corrosive to our country and our democracy. And that means we have to convince people who voted for this president. I think for those of us who live and breathe this stuff, for those of us who live the consequences of the culture wars and the pettiness of our politics, it's hard for us to often step in the shoes of people who don't eat and breathe this stuff,
yeah,
right? And I think there were a lot of people in the last election who saw this candidate and said, well, I feel like costs were lower when he was president, and the Democrats were saying the same thing about democracy then, and we survived.
right.
So it can't be that bad. And they don't like a lot of the other stuff that comes with him, but that sort of won the day. The country survived and costs were lower. And they decided to pull the lever for him. And I think the job before us right now is to make it abundantly clear that Donald Trump is breaking that promise.
Mhm.
He's not spending time on lowering costs. He's spending time attacking vulnerable communities to divide and misdirect our public's attention. He's and the few actions that he's taking on the economy are actively making prices higher.
Way
And
higher.
so we have to keep the main thing, and go after that central sort of tenet of his case to the American voter in November of 2024, so that we can say, listen, we're here. If you didn't vote for this president, we're here to fight for you. If you didn't vote in the last election because you didn't believe politics could work for you, we're fighting for you. And hey, if you voted for this president in the last election and you don't like what you're seeing, we're here for you too. That's okay. That's
Right.
okay. We welcome people. If you don't like what you're seeing, welcome to our side. Welcome to our effort. Welcome to our coalition, because at this moment for our country, we need everyone.
It's true. You've had so many firsts. I mean, beyond. You've were the first transgender person to intern in the White House, if I am correct. First trans congresswoman, like elected to Senate. So many firsts. Who have you gone to for support, advice? Because so many people look up to you, but who has been in your corner during all of these firsts?
Well, first off, no pun intended, I'm really lucky that I have an amazing family and friend group that is there by my side and supports me and loves me and embraces me through all of this. I am very lucky that I work with a team here in Congress, both in Delaware and in DC, that are just next level rock stars, badasses who make this work so much. easier and more bearable for someone in my position. Um, I've got great colleagues, but one of the challenges in this moment, and there's trans elders, people like Mark Kiesling, who have been longtime mentors of mine. But one of the challenges that I am experiencing in this moment is that I've looked for examples of people who have entered Congress who entered Congress as a first when the identity that makes them a first is at the heart of political debate and the district that they represent is not significantly or predominantly made up of the
Hmm.
identity that makes them a first. And I have not been able to find an example that meets all of those qualifications. And so in some ways, I'm figuring this out as I go along. And, you know, I'm going to get it right sometimes, I'm going to get it wrong sometimes, and how to navigate this. I will say, I think that the strategy is working.
Yeah.
Um, the scale of the Republican attacks, the scale of the Republican focus on me has diminished as they've realized I'm not much fun. Like
Oh,
I'm
come
not gonna give
on.
them the response. I mean, I'm fun in other ways, but I'm
But
not gonna
yeah,
give them the response that they want. I'm not gonna be fun in the way that they want me to be
right,
fun, quote unquote, by contributing to their reality TV show spectacles. And that removes some of the political incentive for them to do it. I also think they realize they are looking that it doesn't look great
right,
when you go after someone and they're just not responding and focusing on their job. And I think they're realizing that. And so I think the strategy is working. But again, I'm not always going to strike the right balance because I am proud of who I am. I am proud to be in this position as my authentic self. And my job is to be Delaware's member of Congress, focused on all of the issues that matter, and to not be reduced or siloed into one aspect of who I am. Because at the end of the day, I ran to work on healthcare policy and
right,
paid family medical leave and childcare and yes, other issues that I am passionate about, including equal rights, but it's not the only reason why I'm here. And when I allow myself to be caricaturized or siloed into that one issue area, not only does it undermine my capacity to work on all of the issues, but it also undermines my capacity to guarantee that while I may be a first, I'm not the last.
right. Which is incredible. And so many people look up to you. I mean, you've become a massive pillar in so many different communities because of how multifaceted you are. And so I always have to ask like a fun question.
Yeah,
Not that I don't want to talk about politics with you all day, because
I'm
I do.
happy to answer fun questions.
Who's the most famous person that has reached out to you? Come on, you are very famous, Congresswoman. And I
Um,
know somebody good has slid into the DMs or reached out to your team.
that's so funny. Um, so Ariana Grande shared something I did relatively recently, and that was really cool.
That's a big
Um,
one.
yeah, that's a huge one. I would love Lady Gaga to reach out to me. I would love to hear from Taylor Swift. That has not happened yet. Um, I'm really lucky that throughout my life I've had the opportunity to meet a lot of really cool people. Obviously, you can't get more famous than a president of the United States, and,
Fair
and
enough.
Joe Biden. Obviously, I'm from Delaware, so everyone knows Joe Biden in Delaware. But Joe Biden's been a longtime friend and called me on election night, which resulted in my mother beginning to silently bawl next to me as I got that call. Um, but I am amazed at the people that I work with every day on the Democratic side of the aisle. Folks like Nancy Pelosi and Alex Ocasio-Cortez, different leaders with different approaches, but all unbelievably talented and skilled,
Yeah.
all unbelievably good at their jobs. And I get to marvel, not just that I So Ariana Grande shared something I did, but I marvel at the incredible leaders and particularly the incredible women that I get to serve alongside and learn from and watch just kick ass every single day.
Well, I would argue, and I would put $100 on it that they feel the same way about you.
Oh,
Um, I am so happy that we got to have a quick little catch up. I can't thank you enough for everything that you're doing. I don't live in Delaware, but you do so much more for the whole country and so much more for us folks. And I'm coming to DC. I was telling your team basically for the first time, and I hope I get to see you in
oh my
person
God.
for
When?
World
Well,
Pride.
oh, fantastic. Yes. We will absolutely see one another. You should come by and say hello.
Duh, I will.
And I will just say, you don't live in Delaware yet. Yet.
Ooh, I
Maybe
don't
I'll
know,
convince you.
Congresswoman.
Maybe I'll convince you. Rehoboth Beach is really great.
True. I'll come to Delaware. I don't know what I would do in what would I'm working in Hollywood. Maybe, but listen, supposedly John Voight and Donald Trump are single-handedly going to tariff Hollywood so much that maybe Delaware will become the new Hollywood. Who knows? Anything
Hey,
can happen.
as a former cinema studies major, I'd love to see Delaware be a haven for the
Could
film
you?
industry.
It could be. It could be. Again, you're just the loveliest, and I feel so proud that you came on. Cool, cool, cool. And I hope to see you in a month.
Look forward to seeing you soon. Happy Pride.
Happy Pride. I got you out.